This is the Dreamers Podcast, episode 33, with Assistant Principal turned Trader, Teri Ijoma. Today is August 31st, 2021.
There's something called a USDC coin that's not very well known or talked about, but it's called a stable coin. It's a cryptocurrency. I don't really do crypto trading, but this I do like because it's like a savings account almost. It's a coin that is backed 1-for-1 by the US dollar. And when you put your money into this account, you hold the money in coins in the USDC stable coin, but it gives you an interest rate. And right now it's actually giving 8% interest.
Hello world. Welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I am Stephanie Anne-Lyse, also known as Anne-Lyse Wealth. I am a financial coach and an author. I self-published my first book, Dream of Legacy, a guide to help dreamers reach financial independence and build generational wealth. In this podcast, I'll have conversations with experts and thought leaders who dare to follow their dreams. You'll hear about their journey and their money stories. I hope it inspires you, dreamers out there, to live life on your own terms.
Come on, dreamers, let's change the world!
This podcast is brought to you by Dream of Legacy. Check out dreamoflegacy.com for resources to assist you on your journey to financial independence. Don't forget to join the newsletter while you're there, as this is the best way to stay in touch and be updated on what's going on with Dream of Legacy. Hello, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Lyse Wealth, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you've been listening since the beginning or you're a new listener, I really appreciate you tuning in today. I can't believe that it's been 6 months since I started this podcast. And I actually have a very interesting update. This past week, I found out that my company, Dream of Legacy, has been nominated for 2 Plutus Awards, which are personal finance awards. The Plutus Award is an annual award ceremony for personal finance content creators. And we are among the finalists this year for Best Personal Financial Independence or Retire Early Content, as well as Best Personal Finance Content for Underserved Communities. So I am very thankful for anyone who has tuned into the podcast, visited the blog, and for anyone who's taken the time to nominate Dream of Legacy, because it's from the nominations that a panel of personal finance experts select the finalists. A little over a year after launching Dream of Legacy, I definitely didn't expect this, so I am just thankful to be nominated along some amazing content creators. All right, let's talk about today's episode. Today I'm chatting with Teri Ijoma. Teri is an ex-assistant principal turned trader. She is the founder of Trade and Travel, and ever since quitting her job, she has made millions of dollars trading and also launching Teachable's most successful course to date. And so today, Teri is going to give us some fundamentals about trading, how she goes about selecting companies to trade. She shares her 7-step process before taking on any trade, as well as what her most successful trading students have in common. She really walks us through the trading basics and so much more. After listening to today's episode, if you're interested in finding out more about Teri's trading course, feel free to check out the link in the show notes. So if you're interested in trading and you decide to enroll in Teri's course, by using the link in the show notes, you're also supporting the podcast. All right, here is Teri Ijoma. Before we get into today's episode, please take a couple minutes to go into Apple Podcasts, if you're listening from an Apple device, to rate and review the podcast. If you appreciate the free resources that are provided in this podcast, then the best way to let me know is to do just that. Reviews help the podcast be more visible, and it helps other dreamers discover the podcast. So thank you. I appreciate you. And now let's get back to today's episode. Teri Ijoma, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Stephanie. I'm so excited to be here.
So do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. So as we said, my name is Teri, and my last job before trading and traveling full time was an assistant principal of an elementary school. But I got into a situation where I was just burnt out. I had a really nitpicky boss and just things were not going well. So I needed an exit strategy. And I had learned about trading when I was younger, started trading on the side, and actually became really good at it. So good that I was able to replace my income and start traveling all over the world and trading too. And it was amazing. And people started asking me to teach them how to trade. So now I do that too. I teach people how to trade so they can live their best lives.
Sounds great. And so can you talk a little bit about trading? Because personally, I'm more like a long-term investor. And, I do mostly index funds. I have a couple of individual stocks, but I'm not into the habit of trading. I used to do that early in my 20s, but to be honest, it just became too much for me. Too many emotions, and it was very time consuming. Just finding out more about you, it seems that you have this down to like almost a science. So can you, first of all, tell the listeners what's the difference between, like a trader and a long-term investor?
And Stephanie, you are so right. Trading can be super emotional. As we talk now, different companies have been reporting their earnings, and it can be so emotional just watching to see how the companies are doing. So I totally understand. It can be emotional, but that's actually why I started my class, because we actually read charts to take some of the emotion out of it. You're correct. I try to make this more of a science, more mathematical. What are 7 steps that we can do every time to take some of the emotions out of it? So it's from what companies do you choose? That's the first step. And a lot of people think that traders pick penny stocks or really volatile, crazy stocks, but I actually pick really solid, healthy companies that we know will be around for the long term. So the same way in your long-term account that you may have Apple because it's a great company, I would also be trading Apple, but just as it's going up, I would take some profits. And when it has like a bump in the road and comes down, and it could be for reasons of its own, or maybe the market itself is going down, that's when I'll get back in at a lower price and wait for that to go up, then take some profits. So to your question, the main difference between a long-term investor and a short-term investor is just that short-term investors, we're trading for income. Instead of just buying and holding, when we have some profit, we'll take some of that profit and then wait for an opportunity to get back into the stock.
Do you do day trading, swing trading? What do you do exactly?
I do opportunity trading. That's the word I made up myself.
Love it.
The chart just tells you where the stock price has been over time. So when I look at the stock chart, I will see when is a good time to get into this trade. And it'll tell me like, this is a place where banks, big banks like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, this is where they're buying at this stock price. We can see that on the stock chart. I'll get in there, and that same chart will tell me where I should get out, like what my target is. That might be $20 away, $10 away, whatever the chart tells me. If it takes me one day to reach that target, that's a day trade. I'll get out in one day. If it takes me 2 weeks to reach the target, then I'll let it stay for 2 weeks. That's a swing trade. So really, whatever the opportunity says on the chart, that's how long I keep the trade. It's not like I decide beforehand, I'm only going to be in every trade one day because I'm a day trader. No, whatever the opportunity says, that's what you do.
How do you go about, first of all, identifying the companies?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, my whole first module is on that because when I was first starting to trade, I always picked the wrong companies. I think that's a big problem for a lot of investors. There's a couple tips I would give here. One, when you look at a chart of where has this stock price been over the past year, I want you to pick companies that are on an uptrend. These are healthy companies that are genuinely moving in an upward direction. What I often see new traders do is they want really cheap stocks. So they'll get things that have been going down in price all year because they want to get it low. And it's like, no, we want to get healthy companies that are going up. Another thing is if you're trading, and this is a difference between long-term versus short-term, if you're trading, you have to get stocks that move. So I tell my students, find stocks that move at least $1 a day. What does that mean? So some companies like, I'm thinking like Clorox and some of the like Bellwether, and some of those may actually be moving more now, but there's some companies, they only move a few cents a day. They're your old faithful stocks. If you're in retirement, you probably want these because they don't move up too much and they don't move down too much. As a trader, that's really hard to make money on. So you want something that moves a little bit more frequently. So that's another thing to be looking for. And then a last tip is you want a company with generally healthy statistics and good news for the future. For example, this company says, you know what, in the future, we forecast that our company will grow in revenue. When their earnings come out, and that means just a company reports how they're doing, they say positive things. They've got good revenue and solid earnings per share. Those are the type of companies that you really want to be looking at.
Earlier, you mentioned that you follow a 7-step process before picking a stock.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind telling us more about that?
Sure. And it's actually 7 steps before taking a trade. It's my IWT method. So it starts out with picking the right companies, because as I said, if you don't pick the right company, you mess up from the jump. So I teach my students how to pick the right companies. Then we go into risk management. So when is the best time to get in and out of this stock? Then we look at, okay, if I do decide that this is a good time, how many shares am I trading? One of the biggest mistakes that I made back in the day was I traded like 8,000 shares of a company. If it went down even a little bit, I was in the hole. So sometimes we can have too many shares in a trade and sometimes we can have too little. So I have a formula around that. So we go into several risk management steps. Then we talk about, okay, when you're actually placing the trade, how do you actually do that? We're putting in stops, we're using limit orders, we're putting in a target. So that's a part of the 7 steps. And then there's the exit. Oftentimes, and this is one of the biggest things I wish that people had taught me earlier, is how do you get out of a trade? Because so many times it's really easy to get in and then you're like, oh, I've made some money, now what? So the 7th step is, okay, how do you exit the trade? Are you exiting with a limit order? Are you doing a trailing stop? And I know these words sound big and crazy, but there's actually really detailed ways that you can get out of a trade. And we talk about that in the 7th part. So those are some of the steps in my strategy. And that's what I teach in Trade and Travel.
Most of our listeners are probably not very well versed when it comes to trading. So do you mind just explaining what a stop loss order or limit order mean?
Yes. Stop loss is, have you ever been on a zip line?
Yes.
So a zip line, when you're like flying through the trees and then all of a sudden right before the platform, there's usually like something that just like stops you and it stops all your momentum so that you don't like crash into the platform. That's basically what a stop loss is. It just basically says, if this stock starts going down, it'll take me out of the trade so that I don't lose all my money. And you can actually set that. It's a stop loss order. You can set that order at whatever stock price you want. So let's say that we're trading Apple and we get in at, I'm just making up numbers now, but we get in at $130. If it comes down to $120, we want to get out of the trade. We've lost $10 and we want to, be safe. There's going to be times where you lose. So you don't want to worry about that, but you just want to control how much you lose if you do have to take a loss. Mm-hmm. So we say, you know what? It's coming down $10. I want to get out of the trade. That stop loss will execute at $120 and take you out. So you don't have to worry. And that's what's nice for people who work, because then they can go do their jobs and they know the maximum I'm going to lose on this is where my stop loss is, so I'm okay.
It's interesting how you're just explaining everything and it sounds so easy and almost effortless.
I've been trading now 11 years and I was in the education system for 10 years. So I feel like I know it by the back of my hand or like the back of my hand, and I'm a good teacher. So
when you are investing, right, there's always the risk of losing your investment. For people who are maybe interested in picking up trading as, a side hustle, how do they go about making sure that they don't lose everything they have?
There are a couple tips that I'll give here. So one, in order not to lose everything that you have, one first step is to trade in a simulator with fake money. One of the things I see people do is they have no idea what they're doing, but they just throw money into a brokerage account and they're like, I'm going to figure it out. And lo and behold, they don't know what they're doing and they start losing money. But you can do that in a simulated account with fake money. And there's several different platforms that have simulators. There's one called TradingView. There's one called Rapunzel. It's an app. A lot of high school students use Rapunzel because they have a competition that gives you money for college. You could use, I think TD Ameritrade has a simulator. So just Google what brokers have simulated accounts where I can practice without having to use my real money. So that's step one, use a simulator first. Step two is these risk management steps that I've been telling you about. So learning about a stop loss order that could get you out of the trade, learning about your quantity size, even learning the education on the front end of when's the best time to get in and out of a stock. That's that charting I was talking about. So your education is probably step two. When you become more educated, you'll learn more about these risk management tools and charting tools, and that too will help you not lose as much. There's going to be sometimes, like I said, it's investing. So you got to know there's always a risk with investing, but the goal is for your wins to be at least 3 times your losses.
Those are great, great tips. And so for becoming a trader, you were an assistant principal. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition? How did you go from working at a school, I'm assuming, to becoming a trader?
So I am the queen of a side hustle. I've been in education, or I was in education for 10 years. I started off working as the administrative part of Teach for America. Have you ever heard of Teach for America?
Absolutely, yes.
I was part of the team that would train teachers. So we trained teachers all over the South. So all the Texas teachers, Louisiana teachers. And I loved that. I did that for about 3.5 years. And then after that, I left to go to seminary and then this whole route in education. But way back when I was working in Teach for America, I had actually started a side hustle helping teachers relocate. So I was a real estate agent and I would help all the teachers move to Texas. And I got so good at that, I started making like $50,000, $60,000 a summer just helping teachers relocate. I mean, it was almost double my salary just from the real estate part. And what I started doing is I would take that money every summer and then I would invest it into the stock market. Because around 2010, that's when the housing market crashed and the stock market fell. And so I said, well, instead of buying another property, why don't I just put this money in the market? As I was in this education journey, going up the ranks, I went into strategy at an after school program and then finally ended up working at the school. That whole time on the side, I was doing real estate and also investing in stocks and getting better and better as a trader. So when I was assistant principal and it just wasn't working out, I knew that there were other ways to make money. Either I was going to do real estate full time or I would trade full time, but I wanted to travel. And with real estate, you got to be there for your clients. I did it in Dallas, Texas. So I'd have to be in Texas and, go to this showing and be there to open the door. And, it kind of makes you stuck, even though it's a really awesome way to make money. So for me, trading was the only thing because that would let me travel and I could do it from anywhere in the world. That's how I got into it.
If you've been around for a while, then you know how much I care about financial freedom for all. One thing that often gets in the way of that is debt. That's why I'm happy to announce that I've partnered with an amazing organization called Juno. Juno helps you get lower interest rates by using the power of group negotiation. It is a completely free resource that you can use to secure lower interest rates on new and existing student loans. Head to the link in the episode show notes to find out more. Sunday, Skincare Day, is one of the ways I keep my sanity in these crazy times. Juno is an all-natural, Black-owned skincare brand carefully handcrafted by parents who could not find the proper care solutions to address their family skin problems. All Juno products are made of organic and high-quality ingredients, meticulously chosen to give your skin the smooth results and the glow it deserves.
You said 10 or 11 years you've been trading.
I was listening to an interview that we did on the Journey to Launch podcast, and you were able to become financially independent in the process.
Yes, my assistant principal income, it was about 60,000, and at the end of the year we would get a bonus if our school did well. So it really only added up to about $200 a day. And for me, I wanted a little cushion. So I said, if I could just make $300 a day trading stocks, then I can replace my income. So that was my original goal. All I needed was $300 a day and I could leave. And I started working myself up. I actually used some old 401k money from other jobs. I put that into a self-directed IRA account and I started practicing with that money. Okay, Teri, let's do this. Like at first I was, like I said, you're not good right away. So at first I was just trying to be positive. Like, let me just not lose. Then I said, okay, $100 a day, $200, $300. And I was able to consistently work myself up to $300 a day on a consistent basis. Because sometimes you have some wins, sometimes you have a loss. So averaging about $300 a day, I made it. I was able to quit, replace my whole assistant principal income.
And now you are educating others how to trade. I saw something, you want to teach people how to make $1,000 a day trading. Can you talk maybe a little bit about some of the traits that the people who are able to have $1,000 days on a regular basis, what is it that they do better than the others?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I said our kids. I've been in education too long, but my students who are actually adults, like I'm teaching people from 18 years old to 68 years old. Some of the things that makes those students successful is one, sticking to that 7-step strategy. Whenever a student does well and I kind of ask them, well, what do you think led to your success? They're like, Teri, I just did what you told me to do. I picked the right companies. I looked at the charts, got in at the right time, took some profit. Like I did it. And they're so excited. I do think that it takes discipline, though. If you're asking like, well, what makes them more successful than others? Discipline, being able to like really control your emotions, being able to not be greedy. That's a big thing that comes up in trading. You'll see it going, it's made its $1,000 in a day, but the only way to actually make the profit is you have to sell. And being able to sell the stock at the right time to actually bring in that income is important.
As a trader, can you tell me a little bit about what it means to be financially like independent? And I'm thinking in the sense of living of, passive income. Is it like dividend income? How does it work?
So there's two things that I've done with my money. Like one, I'm still a trader. Another part of it is there's something called a USDC coin. I've been educating a lot of people on it because it's not very well known or talked about, but it's called a stable coin. It's a cryptocurrency. I don't really do crypto trading, but this I do like because it's like a savings account almost. It's a coin that is backed 1-for-1 by the US dollar. And when you put your money into this account, you hold the money in cryptocurrency coins in the USDC stable coin, but it gives you an interest rate. And right now it's actually giving 8% interest. So yes. So it's like a savings account and it's giving 8% interest just to have your money sit in there. It's crazy. So I have some money right now. It actually is producing about $60,000 a month just for sitting in that account. That's my passive thing. So check out USDC stablecoins and just see for yourself, learn more about them because they have a great interest rate.
And where can you purchase those?
I know that TradeStation, a lot of my students use TradeStation as a broker. They have a crypto side, and so you can purchase them there. Also, Coinbase, they have USDC coins as well. And just look it up because your broker may also have a crypto side. So I haven't checked, but like TD Ameritrade, Interactive Brokers, or some good brokers, they may have that as well.
That's definitely a great information to have.
Yes.
I know some listeners are hearing all these great things you've been saying, and they're thinking, okay, how do I get started? How do I pick this up as a side hustle? What are some of the steps that they can take to get started?
Sure. So first, education is important. I do have a free webinar at tradeandtravel.com. So if you go to tradeandtravel.com, I have a free webinar there that teaches you the top 4 things that I teach my students to make $1,000 in a day. So as we've been talking this whole time, that'll really go deeper into like what I'm actually teaching. Another thing is you have to open a brokerage account. So that's another big step you can start working on while you're learning. Open a brokerage account, put some money in it. And a brokerage account is basically just like a checking or savings account, but this one allows you to trade stocks. So just figure out which one you like the best. And then the third is just get started. Please try, go into that simulated account, like I was saying. Another thing is, I know I said 3, but I'm going to add on a bonus. Another thing is download the CNBC app. They are the financial department of NBC Network, and they talk about all the financial side of stocks and companies. That's a great way to start learning the vocabulary and start learning more about the companies that you'll eventually start investing in.
And so how much time does it take you? And then also how much time, like a beginner, should they expect to spend on this if they want to make money trading?
It takes me a max of 2 hours a day. I usually trade in the morning when the market first opens, and then I'll check my cell phone a couple times a day to see how the stocks are doing. And then at night, I may do some research of just checking again to see, okay, these stocks that are in my watch list, how did they do today? I may look at their chart and just readjust where I want to enter and exit the trade. So for me, about 2 hours a day, max. Sometimes it's less than that. For a new person, though, I want you to give yourself more time. For you, it may be a max of 4 hours. And I know someone may say, I don't have that much time. I understand. You may not have to do that all the time, but in the beginning, anything that you're starting takes a little more time. So I usually tell my students, give yourself maybe an hour in the beginning of the day when the market is opening. At lunchtime, and this is what I used to do when I was assistant principal too, I'd make a meeting with myself at 8:30 in the morning. And that would be like my time to set up for the day and also look at the market, see what it was doing. Then at lunchtime, I'd check my cell phone to see how the stocks are doing, see if I wanted to make any adjustments. And then at the end of the day at night, that's when I would really do my homework. I'd look at the news on what the different stocks are that I was trading, and I would look at my charts. And I could usually do that in the bed looking at TV. While I was looking at TV, I'd also, be looking at my phone and looking at the charts. So that's about how much time I think a newbie, if you were giving it your all and wanted to really quit your job, would do. But if you are say I have a lot of nurses right now, I'm actually teaching a lot of nurses and a lot of Black female dentists. I have over 60 female dentists in my class right now. They are busy during the day. So what they'll do is they'll still do their homework at night and look at their charts, but they'll really do more of their homework on the weekend and then just set orders into the computer so that it'll automatically trade for them. And that's something you can also do if you don't have as much time.
Can you tell us about the best trade you've made?
The first one that comes to mind is actually Boeing. I got into it right after the stock market crashed. So in 2020, it was March 23rd or something like that. I was trading options contracts. So I had 1,000 options contracts, and I actually sold some because I was nervous. But then the very next day, it jumped up and I made over $300,000. It was the best trade.
$300,000?
Yes. It was amazing. Actually, there's been another trade where I've made $500,000 in a day. I don't even want to say the wrong thing. It was either American Airlines or Boeing, because there's been a couple where I've had some really good days. And I don't want people to think that this is a get rich quick thing. It's not. And it really does depend how much money you're starting with. So if you're investing with a small amount, then your real goal should be 1% of your cash amount per day.
Oh, I love that.
Small amount, but a consistent, achievable goal. If you're investing $100 trying to make $300,000, that's not going to work.
I love that because, you've been doing this for 10, 11 years. So, as you go in thinking that you'll be able to just do everything that, you're doing just by taking your course, I think that's probably setting yourself up for failure. But just knowing that, down the line, it's a possibility. It's good enough.
Yes. Well, and you know what, too? I feel like I don't want to mess up my dates. I have made over $300,000 on Boeing, and I've made over $500,000 on American Airlines. But I think my first 6-figure day was on May 23rd. Y'all don't hold me to how much was on each of those days, but I remember I was extremely excited. But yeah, those have been some of my best trades, and I've been super excited about them.
Trading is not the only way you are building wealth. You have this course, you mentioned that you were in real estate, and you have this course that's doing amazingly well. What keeps you motivated to continue to do this?
It's the students. It really is the students. Like literally the other day, one of my students called me out of the blue and I was like, how did you get my number? Like, I need to take that off of whatever that is on. But she just randomly called me and she's like, Teri, I really resonated with your story. I'm in your class. I absolutely love the class. And she said, I'm taking care of my dad. I'm a caretaker for him. And so this has allowed me to have the time to take care of him. Mm. And she was just gushing like how much she was learning and how grateful she was. And those are the things that keep me going. It's the students. I really do it because I don't want to be the only person that's learned about this really cool thing.
Love it.
More people should know about it.
So Teri, I like to end the interview with a round of rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Can you tell me about a book that changed your perspective on life?
Who Moved My Cheese? I actually had to read that a long time ago for work, and that changed my life.
And who is it by?
I actually don't know who the author is.
That's fine. I'll look it up and add it. What's one thing about money you wish you could tell your younger self?
It doesn't make you happy. And I know that's cliche, but money does not buy you happiness. If you were, sad before and lonely before, you're just going to be sad and lonely with a lot of money. So find other ways to bring yourself joy.
What's the best investment in yourself you've made so far?
Courses. Even as a trader, you can always become a better trader. So learning from other people, figuring out new things, that's been a great investment.
Filling the blank in 3 words or less. Money to me is
freedom.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I want people to know God from knowing me. Like I want them to see his glory. And I just want people to remember that I was here.
Well, Teri, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for sharing your expertise with the audience. Please tell everyone where they can find you and how to find out more about your course.
Sure. On Instagram, you can find me at Teri Ijoma or at Trade and Travel. You can actually find us everywhere at Trade and Travel. YouTube, we have Trade and Travel page, Instagram, Trade and Travel, website, tradeandtravel.com. And that's where you find that free webinar. So definitely go check out the free webinar at tradeandtravel.com.
All right. Thank you, Teri.
Thank you.
That was Teri Ijoma. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Coming up next week on the podcast, we have real estate investor and serial entrepreneur, Stephanie Assi. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Dreamers podcast. You can find the episode show notes and all of the links mentioned at dreamoflegacy.com. If you liked today's episode, here's what you can do to support me and help more dreamers discover the podcast. Follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate and review the podcast to help the podcast gain more visibility. Share the podcast with your family, friends, and coworkers. And if you really enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to tag me at thedreamers.podcast on Instagram and let me know what you liked about today's episode. All right, dreamers, that's it for today. I will see you back here next week for another episode of the Dreamers podcast.
Okay, dreamers, time to build this legacy.
This podcast is for general information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax, legal, financial planning, insurance, accounting, investment, or any other kind of professional advice or services. Please consult with an appropriate tax, financial, or legal professional to receive appropriate advice based on your situation.